Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Believe in best.
Coming up tonight on Our News, the former health minister urges officials to screen previously planned events as health officials record a record-breaking 330 new COVID-19 cases on Christmas Day. Police on Grand Bahama investigate another murder. The Atlantis president hoping for increased airlift in the new year. And an elderly home needs your assistance.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Jared Higgs, topping news tonight.
Health officials reported 330 COVID-19 cases on Christmas Day and 91 new cases on Christmas Eve. Those 330 cases on Christmas represent a single-day record in the Bahamas. Of the new cases, there were 320 on New Providence, 3 on Grand Bahama, 1 each on Abaco, Eleuthera, Exuma, and Andros, and the locations were pending for an additional 3 cases. The ministry said 74 cases have a history of travel. As of yesterday, 19 COVID-19 patients were in hospital.
Former Minister of Health, Dr. Dwayne Sands, says events planned before the latest changes to the COVID rules came into place could be screened to determine whether they can go forward. Sands says he isn't advocating for events with thousands or hundreds of people, but he acknowledges that some people might feel a kind of way with the new rules taking effect in the middle of the holidays.
There has been a call for weeks now to ramp up the level of restrictions to protect Bahamians from COVID. Now that the cow has bolted the barn, we have done that.
On Thursday, during a national address, Prime Minister Philip Davis announced a 20-person limit on indoor gatherings and a 30-person limit on outdoor gatherings. An amendment to the health services rules also makes provision for individuals wishing to host concerts, fetes, carnivals, and other similar events to apply to the Ministry of Health's Advisory Committee for permission.
One of the downsides to this is that there will be people who have planned their weddings and planned their family gatherings and so on and so forth. And they will feel some kind of way that there have been other people that have been allowed to have their events, some of whom would have flaunted the rules, and now these other individuals have to pay.
The change in rules cast doubt on events and parties planned and widely advertised for the Christmas period. Other more personal events, such as weddings, are also now in question, with the rules stipulating a specific amount of attendees unless you apply to the ministry for permission. Sands, while calling the restrictions the right thing to do, suggested a course of action for those events that were already in the works.
Maybe what should happen is those persons that find themselves in a quandary should have their particular previously scheduled events screened to determine how they can get some form of exemption.
Then there's the risk of events continuing without permission. Sands says he believes prior to this latest spike, Bahamians were led to believe that COVID was no longer a threat.
The tone that has been set has led any Bahamians to get this false belief that COVID is no longer an issue. And that's a very unfortunate situation to be in, because we now find ourselves facing an existential threat, and we don't know how bad this is going to be. We hope and pray that it's not going to be so bad, but it certainly in sheer numbers, it could be worse than the Delta wave.
Police in Grand Bahama are investigating a shooting death that occurred at a business establishment on East Sunrise Highway on Christmas night. According to Grand Bahama Police Press Liaison ASP Stephen Roll, 2 men were shot in the incident.
Upon the officers responding, they have met a Japanese-type vehicle with a adult male driver inside, lifeless, with apparent gunshot injuries about the body. Further reports is that a second male, a passenger of that vehicle, was shot to the leg and were transported to the Iran hospital for medical treatment.
EMS attended the scene and pronounced the driver of the Japanese vehicle dead.
The police, while on scene, took an adult male into custody who was assisting with this investigation.
Police also reported that 2 men were shot at a business establishment in West End after an argument. Royal caution Grand Bahamians to be cautious.
My advice to persons who are moving about during the Yuletide season is be mindful where you may go and who you may be around. As you are aware, there are persons lurking around just to do criminal activities. Christmas now is coming to an end, or is ready to an end, and we want to urge the public to still practice the safety protocols as they move about their business establishment and their residents.
While the Omicron variant has shown some propensity to cause breakthrough infections in vaccinated persons, Director of the National HIV/AIDS and Infectious Disease Program, Dr. Nakia Forbes, says vaccination is still effective in protecting individuals from severe illness.
In a way, there's a silver lining. So we know that persons who are vaccinated can get COVID with Omicron. But the good news is that it will help to protect against hospitalizations and death and severe symptoms. So that is what we're seeing so far. So that is encouraging. While there is some information that some boosters may help to add the protection against Omicron.
8,734 COVID-19 booster shots have been administered, according to Minister of Health, Dr. Michael Darville. Government made adjustments to its COVID-19 rules last week, reducing the permitted size of indoor gatherings to 20 and outdoor gatherings to 30. As the holiday season continues, Forbes had this advice for Bahamians.
Don't have a large gathering. Don't go to any large events. Continue to follow the public health precautions. Vaccinations will still be helpful to prevent severe disease and hospitalizations. And smaller gatherings should be okay, especially if persons are vaccinated. And you could add an additional layer of precaution by doing a test on the day of the gathering or less than 24 hours before.
Though airlift has improved over the last year, Atlantis President Audrey Oswald says it is still not where it needs to be, as prospective visitors to the Bahamas are still seeking more flight options when making travel plans.
Airlift has steadily improved over the course of the year, but it's still not back to 2019 levels where we need it to be. And, I hear from many people that the round-trip airfare out of our key feeder markets like South Florida, from New York, Philadelphia, New Jersey, the airfare is much higher than it was back in 2019. And that, makes people pause and think twice about booking a flight.
Inadequate airlift has been a concern for hotel operators since major properties reopened during the pandemic. Several airlines have begun direct flights to the Bahamas from various cities around the world, but Oswald said current demand far exceeds flight availability.
We need to continue to see the airlines add seats, add capacity, add more direct flights, and get us back to the 2019 levels, because there's clearly the demand.
Still to come on our news, an elderly home's plea for help, and we count down the quotes of the week. That's coming up when we return.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
The COVID-19 pandemic has delivered a blow to just about everyone, but some are feeling it more than others, especially facilities that care for the elderly, like the Persis Rogers Home for the Aged. Administrators say this year has been one of the roughest. Jasmine Brown reports.
The Persis Rogers home, located on Hawthorne Road, is home to 20 elderly individuals. Shirley Clark, who is an administrator at the home, says they greatly depend on assistance from the outside, but noted that funds have all but dried up. She says the biggest needs right now include cleaning supplies and bedding.
It's a pandemic, and people wasn't giving us like how you normally do. And we very much depend on assistance from the outside.
Clark says that the COVID-19 pandemic has also changed the way they do things at the home and the residents interact with their families.
Yeah, just about everybody is vaccinated. Because before they come into the home, we require them to get vaccinated. We didn't allow visitors at this time. But the relatives, they can come in and they can see their relatives. We bring them out and they can talk at a distance to them.
Just this week, the home received a $2,500 donation from the Consultant Physician Staff Association, a gift Clark says was desperately needed due to the massive drop in donations as a result of the pandemic. CPSA President Dr. Sabri K. Pinder-Butler says more needs to be done for the older persons in general, especially during the pandemic when the elderly are the most at risk.
We know that, our population is aging more. We encourage persons to take care of their health so that as they age, they can age gracefully. But we know that there have been challenges in the economy and in the country. So persons perhaps who would have helped before were not able to do so. And I do think that more can be done to take care of the elderly in this country. And so this is one of the reasons why the CPSA thought it was fitting for us to look at older persons and the elderly.
If you would like to donate, you can reach the home at 325-5092. Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
The Salvation Army has a new divisional commander who shared his big plans for the charitable organization. Berthany McDermott tells us more.
Back in August, Major Rudolph Mayo assumed the role of divisional commander for the Salvation Army. Mayo says there's a number of issues he'd like to tackle. Topping his list is securing rental assistance for those in need.
I've seen that there is a lot demand for renting. A lot of people that were affected by the pandemic and yet has not get a chance, and people are still unemployed and people are still seeking for rent assistance, medical assistance, and even in Freeport we have also helped with housing, and we will continue to do so.
The pandemic has caused many Bahamians to fall on hard times. Nearly 2 years later, and many Bahamians are still struggling, even with government rental assistance. Part of Abaco and Grand Bahama were ravaged by Hurricane Dorian, followed by the global pandemic.
And even in Abaco, we have a big plan for Abaco in the coming year, and we want to see the Salvation Army establishment, and it's so that when you are present, you are better able to help the people.
Mayo says the Salvation Army is also seeking to work with the government to help victims of abuse.
We are also looking to see how we can assist the country and even the government to come alongside them to see how and what we can do in opening new institutions for abused women and children neglected and child abuse, to see how we can have social aspect that really covers that.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
When Our News comes back from the break, the PHA advising members of the public to only come to the hospital in case of emergencies. More on that when we return.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
Welcome back. The Public Hospitals Authority and Princess Margaret Hospital advising the public that only emergency cases are encouraged to utilize the emergency department at Princess Margaret Hospital at this time. Non-emergency patients are asked to contact their primary care physician or utilize community clinics for care. A medical emergency is an acute injury or illness that poses an immediate risk to a person's life or long-term health, sometimes referred to as a situation risking life or limb. If you are unsure whether you require emergency medical assistance, officials urge you to call 919 or the emergency department at Princess Margaret Hospital at 376-7014. Find out the quote of the week. That's coming up when our news returns.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
It's time now for a look back on the stories that made news this week. At number 3, Atlantis is reporting a strong surge in bookings, but it comes as both the United States and the Bahamas deal with a surge in COVID-19 cases. Atlantis President Audrey Oswald says she hopes this encourages even more people to get vaccinated. And if you are vaccinated, get your booster shot.
In spite of the fact that there's a little bit of a surge in the U.S. right now, we're hoping that we're not seeing a lot of cancellations. We're still seeing bookings, so we're hoping that the business is going to hold. We're thrilled to say that we've had a lot of campaigns to get our team members vaccinated, and the numbers are rising every day, so we're strong in vaccinations.
At number 2, Leon Griffin, the husband of former Cabinet Minister Melanie Griffin, was shot and killed outside his home in Winton Meadows on Thursday evening. Former Prime Minister Perry Christie among those offering condolences on the scene.
She called me very early on when she was here alone with her daughter, having heard the shot, having gone outside and seen her husband. And it is very, very tragic occurrence. At this time of the year, it's compounded in terms of how tragic it is. Melanie and her husband didn't deserve this, but it has happened, and it's another example of the great challenge we have in the country of being able to deal with issues of criminality.
And your quote of the week comes from Prime Minister Philip Davis, who announced on Thursday that he is in quarantine after coming into contact with a family member who tested positive for COVID-19. From quarantine, Davis announced new COVID-19 rules, including limits to the sizes of gatherings and new entry requirements at the border.
Last weekend, we had a family gathering, which included several family members who traveled here from abroad. Even though everyone was vaccinated and everyone tested negative before travel, several of those who were visiting from abroad tested positive on the 5th day after arrival in the country. Since then, my wife and other family members have tested positive. I remain negative. Because they were vaccinated, they are either asymptomatic or are experiencing only mild symptoms. I'm so grateful that that is the case.
Thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm Jared Higgs. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.